You're listening to the Thrive Podcast, where every week we dive into a practical, tactical tip to bring you from a life of simply surviving to thriving. It's personal development for the everyday girl who is done with coasting through her days, done with feeling like she's missing out on the deeper meaning of her own life, and done with mediocrity once and for all. Because it's not enough to simply survive. You deserve to thrive. Welcome back to Thrive. Power struggles, sibling fighting, constant chaos, solemn nods of solidarity from the parents in the house. Am I right? Kristen feels our collective pain, and as a parent empowerment coach, encouragement consultant, ex-Montessori teacher and director, and certified facilitator of positive discipline, she's here to help. While on paper, she's got it all as a would-be know-it-all mom, her journey wasn't always easy, transitioning from a teacher to a parent herself. Today on Thrive, Kristen realistically explains positive discipline and breaks down some best practices based on the latest in neuroscience and child development and her on-the-job training as a mom of three. We also talk about reparenting your own inner child, especially if your upbringing involved a different parenting style than what you're personally implementing today. Kristen helps us focus on your own strengths while figuring this whole mom thing out as you go, with tips on proactively parenting instead of constantly feeling like you're just reacting to little people with big feelings. Walk away from today's episode feeling encouraged and empowered as the awesome parent you are. Stay tuned through this conversation. Drop it 5 stars if you like what you're listening to. And now, welcome, Kristen.
Hello. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yay! We are super excited to have Kristen on the show today. Our last parenting episode we were just talking about was a huge hit, so we knew we had to give the people what they wanted and share another. So I am so stoked to have you on Thrive. For a really quick introduction, Kristen, you're a certified facilitator of positive discipline. You're an encouragement consultant. You're a parent empowerment coach, all of which are awesome titles. You're a Montessori teacher, or you were a Montessori teacher and a director and the assistant head of schools and all of that jazz. But I know you had a bit of a rough journey as a mama getting to those points before you kind of had your big aha moments and kind of changed direction in a lot of ways. So let's backtrack a little before flying forward. Can you introduce yourself and peel back the velvet curtain, so to speak, of motherhood to what your reality was like a few years ago before you implemented some changes?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I felt starting off, I was very well prepared for this job of motherhood because I was in Montessori. I was an educator. I worked for 10 years in Montessori school. So that all happened before I had kids. And then I had my daughter, and she just pushed every button of mine, and she didn't want to wear what I wanted her to wear, and she didn't want to sit in her car seat. Like, it just seemed like everything I wanted her to do, it was the exact opposite. And so I was working at a Montessori school at the time, consulting, and the head of school had said, "Oh, have you heard of positive discipline?" So I was trained about 11 years ago in positive discipline, and I was like, oh, the tools just resonated with me and my Montessori education. So I went all in and I became a facilitator for teachers and for parents. But what I've learned, it's like one day at a time. It's learning the communication skills, but really understanding child development, understanding what I should really be expecting of my kids. And I think learning a lot about myself. I remember hearing that when I first became a mom, of like, you're going to grow so much and they are the teachers, right? They teach us. And that was so true. And it was a journey, as you said. Like, I've been on a journey, and thank goodness I have this growth mindset. But I think the growth mindset came out of the struggles, out of the like, oh gosh, I should be so good at this, and why am I struggling? And then I started to realize, wait a minute, I'm not the only one struggling. There's other people that have these same challenges. So that made me feel good too, that I was like not the only one. And I think sometimes as moms, we feel like we're the only ones struggling and we're failing, and that's just not the case.
I mean, and I think a lot of people can agree with what you just said or can relate to that sense of feeling like, oh, I should know what I'm doing. I should be better at this. But like we all are, if you're a parent, at some point you are a first time parent and you don't
Mm-hmm.
exactly come into the world yourself with this innate understanding of how to raise other human beings. Like it's not something that's just built into our DNA necessarily. So I feel like that's something that we all should give ourselves a bit more grace for because it's not something that is automatic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're right too, where some of our gut reactions might be instead of stepping back and thinking, okay, what I think should be working or what I'm trying clearly isn't working. Let's reassess. I think sometimes a gut reaction instead might be to dig your heels in even more and be like, well, I'm the boss and I'm the grown up here. Therefore, I need to exert even more
Mm-hmm.
control over these little tiny people because they need to get it and they're not listening and whatever. So, can you give us a few high notes of what positive discipline actually means and what, because I feel like that's something that those two words might feel like they don't belong in the same sentence for a lot of people, especially for any of us who grew up with a little bit more of like the authoritative parents.
Exactly, exactly. So positive discipline is based on the work of Alfred Adler and Rudolf Dreikurs. And they actually could be thought of as like the founding fathers of positive psychology. And then Jane Nelson and Lynn Lott created a curriculum and a program to teach parents this way of teaching. So discipline comes from the root word disciplina, which really means a follower of truth, to teach. And it's based on this idea, and Rudolf Dreikurs found that all human beings have this need for belonging and significance. And I like to think of belonging as unconditional love and significance as a little bit of power and autonomy over our life. So we all have this need, not just children, all human beings have this universal need of belonging and significance. But what he found is when children don't perceive that, they don't perceive that they have this unconditional love, maybe because we raised our voice, maybe because we don't look, we don't have those kind eyes. They're going to misbehave and they're going to find a mistaken way to get belonging and significance. So we talk about mistaken goals, and it could look like undue attention or misguided power or revenge or assumed inadequacy. And those are the four big mistaken goals. Positive discipline also believes in being kind and firm at the same time. So, like you had said, some of us may have been raised by this authoritarian approach. Positive discipline is the authoritative approach. So, it's kind, and very firm. We have boundaries, but the boundaries are maybe spoken beforehand. It's more of a democratic society, not the like I'm the boss and I said so, and you're the loser, so you're going to do what I say. It's okay. We're working together as a family, and we're on this, kind of very respectful. So it's also based in we're going to treat everybody with dignity and mutual respect. And wouldn't that be nice if everybody could be treated with dignity and mutual respect? And it also is based on teaching life skills and characteristics for good moral character and autonomy and building autonomy and helping the child through experiences to really form their own skills for problem solving, conflict resolution. It's really helping the child to think. And sometimes it's not just everything what we say to the child, it's what they then say to themselves. So it's really working on the mindset early on. But those are like the big overarching. It's kind and firm. It's based on this, perception of belonging and significance, and then treating the children with mutual respect and dignity.
Yeah. For yourself, since I know you mentioned having a strong-willed firstborn, I can completely relate to a strong daughter. What was the biggest moment for you where that kind of led you to thinking, all right, something's got to give, like I cannot keep this up as is. And then if you were transitioning at all from how maybe you were being with her to a new way of thinking or parenting or teaching, was there how did that transition go? And was that something that
Mm,
she responded well to, or maybe noticed, or something that, because I'm sure there was like consistency you needed to have then, and like
definitely.
switching some things. Walk
Yeah.
us through what that looked like and any tips for doing that, because I'm sure the more you talk, the more people might be going like, oh no, I have to make change, and now change is scary and hard, and
Hmm.
I don't know how to do that when there's other people
Yeah.
involved who were familiar with the older way.
Hmm. Yes. And that was the thing. There was just a few little changes that I made, and a lot were the internal changes in myself. So another thing with positive discipline, which I teach on, is this positive discipline house. And if you look at the foundation of the house, the foundation is the personal growth and development of the parent. So first I had a lot of self-awareness of like, oh, I've got some control things going on. And I teach kind of this top card type personality test where we learn, are we these 4 different lifestyles? And you learn so much about yourself, about your parenting partner, about your kids too. And so I do have some control. I don't want to say issues, but I have some control like tendencies. And so I needed to give her that. So it was giving her choices, not unlimited choices, but do you want to wear these pairs of pants or these? Or it was, so there's the personal growth and development. That's the foundation. The next stage up is building the relationship. So it's all about relationships, relationships, relationships. So I think of it as relationship with ourselves, really learning ourselves. And it goes back to our childhood. I talk a lot about reparenting the inner child that comes out, relationship with our child, and then the relationship with the family. And I remember this as growing up, like in our family, we do this. So it was kind of like, this is what we do. These are the values, these are the morals, and these are the things that are just going to come out in the day to day, week by week, year by year. And then the next stage up are the systems and routines. So a huge positive discipline tool are routine charts. And it's not a routine chart that you buy on Etsy or you find something on Pinterest. It's creating a routine chart with your child. And that's giving them the power. That's giving them the boundaries of like, oh, what do we do first when we wake up? What do we do next? What do we do next? You're asking a lot of curiosity questions. You're asking the child to give you ideas. And then you kind of create a chart together. So the routines and systems are really key to make a household run, smoothly. And then the last piece of the positive discipline house are these tools. And there's like about 70 different positive discipline tools that I teach throughout the course of all different ages. Like right now, that strong-willed toddler at the time is going to be 14 in 2 days. So my oldest is 14 almost. And then I have an 11-year-old and I have an 8-year-old. And it changes. They go through different developmental stages. So what I was doing for that 3 or 4-year-old, and I have to say, I'm so happy she's a strong-willed 14-year-old now. I'm so happy she has some of those skills and that confidence now, when I really wish she just wore the outfit I wanted to. It would have been a lot easier if she just did what I said. But I'm so glad she's not doing what her friends are telling her to do. I'm glad that she has some of these things. So that's what I look at too, is the foundation of, first we have to be right in ourselves with going with our own personal growth and development. And then it's the relationship, focusing on teaching out of love, disciplining out of love, not out of fear. And then the systems and the routines are really, really important too.
For sure. You mentioned reparenting your own inner child. What does that mean to you, and what does that look like in practice? Because I think a lot of us don't necessarily realize the full extent of this until we become parents ourselves and start really looking inward and analyzing things. And that's if you even get to the point of looking inward and
Mm-hmm.
analyzing and being that self-aware, but really looking at how we are and why we are the way we are. And then the light bulbs start going off like, oh, I can see where this might be coming from or why it might need to be addressed. So can you kind of flesh that out a little bit more?
Yeah, yeah. It's so interesting. And I think it all starts with this self-awareness. And the self-awareness is huge. I'm trained on a lot of cognitive behavioral psychology. So it's this 5 primary drivers. And if you look at the first driver is a belief. And a lot of these beliefs, or sometimes you might have heard them as limiting beliefs, are formed in childhood. So they're formed in early childhood. And it wasn't something that we necessarily came up with. It was maybe our parents or maybe a loved one or somebody who loved us, but they said something. So somehow we came up with this belief. And then our beliefs will dictate our thoughts, what we're thinking. And that's the self-awareness is like, wait a minute, what am I thinking that's causing these feelings? So the third driver are feelings. So our beliefs dictate our thoughts, which will create these feelings that we have inside. Sometimes they're good feelings and sometimes they're not good feelings. And then that will create our actions, which then create our results. And sometimes because it might be a limiting belief of, I don't know, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I can't do it, like that type of belief, that will give us certain thoughts of, well, maybe I can't do that. So it's understanding that that belief, because it came from early childhood, it might have been a belief from a 6-year-old. Like we made that decision as a 6-year-old, but what we need to look at is now we're the grown adult and we have a fully functioning brain. And I'll talk to you a little about the brain afterward. Is we need to be aware that if that belief isn't serving us any longer, we're going to have to make a new decision. And it actually was a decision in the beginning that was made for us. And as the adult, we have to reparent our inner child and reparent some of those beliefs that aren't serving us anymore. And let's figure out something that is going to help us to feel better feelings. Because you can kind of only be in 2 states of being. You can either be in this primal state of this like fear, fight, flight response, or you can be in a powerful state where you can think and you can respond to your child. And sometimes our kids trigger certain things, or our parenting partner might, and our brain goes like this, and we're not able to access our fully functioning prefrontal cortex.
So if someone wants to start the process, say they get through and they realize, ooh, there's a belief, and that's probably from, elementary school or wherever.
Mm-hmm.
What's kind of the process for walking through and addressing that so that you can actually truly internalize something different? Because I know there's a big difference for a lot of us between, yep, I logically understand something to be true or untrue versus I truly believe it in my gut and soul and act
Mm-hmm.
from that place.
Yeah. So usually it comes through some coaching and a lot of curiosity questions. So when I do one-on-one coaching with parents, we'll think of a scenario of when it may have happened, or when they start to feel like the bad feelings. And then through many questions, powerful questions, we come up with the thought, like, what is the thought that is making you feel this way? If it's not a good feeling, it's not a good thought. And usually the thought is unintelligent. It's just not true. So we need to come up with a more powerful thought, like what is true and what's going to help us to move forward. So it does take the reparenting and that self-confidence to really want to change. And like you had said before, like change is hard, change is scary, and but to want to change. So it's that self-awareness of like, all right, I'm stuck, something's not right, I don't feel good. And maybe we use the example of like, I yell at my kids, like I'm yelling at my child, and 1, doesn't feel good, 2, it's making her cry, and everybody's a mess afterwards. So where did that come from? And maybe we were yelled at as a kid, or maybe we don't feel confident in our parenting skills. So we just like, blah, and we just yell. So you kind of go back to, all right, what could be a better feeling thought? And it's like, I'm learning every day. I'm getting better and better. And I do say like, it's one day at a time. So each morning it's like, okay, today's a new morning. I'm not going to remember, like, don't worry about what happened yesterday. Today's a new morning. And we have to do that as parents because we have to constantly be on and be 100% for our kids. And we're not going to always be. We're going to make mistakes, and we're going to yell, and we're going to do all the human things that happen, but how we can respond instead of react. And that is going back to taking care of ourselves, taking care of our own needs. But the thinking is so important. So it's the thoughts. It's like being aware of what the thoughts are that's making us feel that way. And it may see like it's hard, like you said, it feels very ingrained, but like this is just the way it is. And it has been that way for a while. But what we need to do is kind of reprogram your brain to do something different. And it's changed, but it's learning. It can happen.
For sure. Going back to something you talked about earlier and about, power struggles, especially in the toddler age, I feel like there really does come an age where those power struggles kind of reign supreme. I mean, funnily enough, our 4-year-old came home from preschool one day and she informed us that, quote, there are 3 bosses in this house, mommy, daddy, and Olivia. End quote. So I think it's safe to say that many like preschool age parents are pretty familiar with those power tugs of war and that
Yeah.
incessant need for control. They're like little dictators. So when you've got that strong-willed kiddo with very strong, clear wants and demands, what's your advice for kind of cutting back on the tug of war, making sure
Mm-hmm.
they do know, keeping it democratic, but still also making sure they know that like mommy
Mm-hmm.
and daddy or your parents have the ultimate say, but also still raising them to be strong, empowered kids?
Yeah, yeah. And so that's where we want them to use their power in productive ways and use their power in constructive ways. So are you familiar with the Montessori approach to education?
Not not super well.
Yeah.
So, and I don't give us the refresh for all of our
Well,
listeners.
so much in Montessori schools, and I help parents to kind of do like a little more of the Montessori in the home, is helping the child to feel confident through their own experiences and teaching them skills. So it's using this personal power, using this autonomy. Autonomy is a huge skill that a 3 and a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, they need that. I want to do it. I do, right? That's probably what you hear. And we have to give them things that they can do. So that's where like a routine chart is really helpful because it helps the child to do some things on their own. But it's how do you set up the environment at home so that they can do it? So you kind of create your home so it's not like, oh no, you can't touch it. So no, no, no. Where can you make it accessible? And I think the kitchen is a great place. So you have the little step stool so that she can wash her own hands, and you maybe set up the her plates and her cups in a low cabinet so she can reach it. You have a little spot in the refrigerator. Okay, here's Olivia's basket. These are her food. So like, how can we set it up so that the child has more independence? And using that power in that, in that way of, and I always love doing, I really need your help. Oh, Olivia, can you come and help me? I could really use your help. And like I did this last night with my son, because we're realizing like since the pandemic, like he goes to turn the TV on right away. And it's like, he wants to go on to the screens. And I just kind of laid down the law. I said, today's a no screen day. But I really could use your help. I'm mashing some potatoes. So I had him scrub the potatoes. I had him peel the potatoes with me. We were doing it together. And I kept him busy for 30 minutes and he just felt so good afterward. It was like so it's using their power in the constructive ways, but also giving them choice. Choice works really well with a 4-year-old. And then sometimes she'll be like, nope, I don't want that choice. And so then you could say, no, that's not a choice. Or they don't have to always be the loser. And you'd be like, all right, well, what's your idea? What are some ideas that you have? I like to say that too. It's usually asking like a what or a how question. And that's getting them to think, what do you need on your feet before we go outside? Not go put your shoes on. So another tool we use is asking versus telling. So instead of telling your child what to do, how to do it, when to do it, you can ask with a what or a how question.
What's so funny is that now, at least for my daughter, one of her catchphrases right now is, "Oh, I've got an idea." So she's really big on having ideas and telling us all of them. And she, God bless her heart, will give us the entire lowdown of how she expects things to go because she's got it all out in her brain. So
Yeah.
it's pretty adorable because she's full of ideas. Apparently they do not end for her.
Yeah. And that's amazing. And that's what you want to keep going, and keep that light, that going. It's so great.
Yeah, yeah. Well, something that we also talked about in our last parenting episode here, listeners, if you missed it, I think it was episode 126 with Destiny Davis. It was so good, but we talked about the big need for reflection as a parent and really taking that step back after difficult moments or meltdowns, especially to actually assess why something happened if you want to try to prevent that from happening again. And that how
Mhm.
that's kind of, you can't like teach in the middle of the tantrum, so to speak. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on being a more proactive parent instead of always feeling like you're just reacting to whatever your kids say or do and whatever the heck happens in the circus.
Yes, yes. So I'd love to start it with, I had mentioned the brain, and I love to teach this brain in the palm of your hand, because I think this will tie into it. So this is by Dr. Dan Siegel, and he wrote The Whole Brain Child, and he has a lot of excellent parenting books. He's a neuroscientist, and I teach this to my kids too, and I teach this in classrooms. So this is your brain in the palm of your hand. So if you look at your palm down, this is the automatic bodily functions, your breathing, your heart rate. This is the brain stem. And then if you put your thumb in the middle, this is the amygdala, and this is the midbrain. And this is the major radar. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to freeze? Are you going to fight? Or are you going to flight? This is also where our emotions and our memories are stored. And then if you put your fingers down, the back of your hand is the cortex. It's the senses, where all the senses come in. And then this front fingers, your distal fingertip, this is your prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is where that executive functioning skills come in, emotional regulation, morality, judgment, response flexibility. What am I going to do? Am I just going to respond, or am I going to react? So all this, unfortunately, is not fully developed until the age of 25. So sometimes we're expecting our kids to have function that they just don't have. They're going to learn them. They're going to get them. They're going to get them a lot by watching us. So this is the brain. And then what happens is we might be having a bad day. Maybe we didn't get enough sleep. We had a tough commute to work. Things didn't go well. You get home, the house is a mess. Everybody's coming at you in all different ways, and you literally flip your lid. So your fingertips are up. The amygdala is showing, and it's just our brain. It's our brain functioning and doing what it is supposed to do, because that is how our brains are wired. So we as adults need to learn how to do that emotional regulation and take the deep breaths. I do a lot of meditation and deep breathing now as a parent of 3 kids, because I have to, you're able to kind of, I think meditation has helped me a lot to have that space in between responding and reacting. And the self-awareness of like, okay, I'm the fully functioning adult. I have the brain, I have the prefrontal cortex. My child right now doesn't. And another thing that scientists have discovered are these mirror neurons in the brain. So when our brain is flipped and when we're in that primal state, the mirror neurons, our child is going to be like that. Or if the child's brain is flipped and they're having a temper tantrum, it's very easy for us to get emotionally hijacked and get there too. So it's just, really calming ourselves down. We have to be in the proper state to deal with our kids. And sometimes we have to take a time out. So I think that time out is sometimes thought of as like a negative way. I know in the American lifestyle, it's like you go to your room and you take a time out. In positive discipline, we call it a positive timeout. because we know that people do better when they feel better. So what I help my parents to do is, first, we have to take the time out. So we might need to take a deep breath. I have the bathroom technique works well. Have you ever heard of the bathroom technique? Okay. You just go into the bathroom and you lock the door. And you go and you lock the door and you take a few deep breaths and put some water on your face. You just like, sometimes you have to get away and that's okay. And like you said in the beginning, like we have to give ourselves grace. We're human. Our brain is going to go this way sometimes, and that's normal. But the other thing that you can do, and your daughter is still a little young, I usually recommend this at age like 5 or 6, is you help your child to create a positive timeout space. So I did this with my daughter. I think she was probably about 4 or 5. And we created this little space in her bedroom. And I'm like, let's create a space that will make you feel good. Sometimes your little sister gets into your things and you get all mad and you want to hit her, and it's not okay to hit. So let's make a space where you can go and just be alone and feel good. So we put like a little beanbag chair. We put her books and a little like these like look and find books. Like it was all just things that she decided, and we put them in her room, and that was her peace area, we called it. And then you help the child to make up a name for this thing. And it works. It doesn't work all the time, but it's an idea. And like sometimes with parents too, I help the children to come up with maybe 4 different ideas. What's 4 different ideas that we could do to help you to feel better? Because we all know that people do better when they feel better. And it's just like teaching that language too to children. It's that emotional intelligence that we know we all need. So helping the child to understand their feelings. All feelings are fine. And to understand those feelings and to validate. Validating is a big one too. Validate the feelings, you seem pretty angry right now. And that's it. Just validating, and the goes a long way.
For sure, for sure. Well, now since you have 3 too, talk to us a little bit about sibling fighting and kind of like the general chaos that can come, especially when you're outnumbered in your home by like a bunch of little humans and none of them have fully developed prefrontal cortexes,
Yeah.
especially because as good as it is to, take that bathroom break or take a deep breath or take the time for yourself, I'm sure when you are completely outnumbered, logistically, you don't necessarily have the luxury of doing that in the moment.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that for everyone who's in a similar boat.
Yeah, because I've done a lot of work around this because I also am one of 3. I have 2 other siblings, and I have the same dynamic as I have. So it was interesting. And when I was doing this in my encouragement consultant training, we really talked about the pros and cons of having siblings. Siblings kind of teach you how to fight really well. Siblings can teach you how to love really well. Like there's a lot of pros and cons with sibling relationships. And I love the positive discipline tools. Usually she has different acronyms for it. And this one is like the 4 Bs. And with sibling rivalry, sometimes they really are just trying to manipulate the parent to get involved. So one of the Bs, and I might be mixing them all up, but one of the Bs is just to bear it. You bear it. You're just there. You hear it, but don't get involved. Don't get involved. Like, see if they can, come up with the decision themselves. Sometimes there's going to be violence or what it looks like it could be. And so you can't bear it. So that's when you might want to boot them out. So you kind of like get involved. You say, I see you're both fighting over this toy. Mommy's going to take the toy. You go to the family room and you go to your bedroom. Like, boot them out. Or I see you're fighting. Go outside and fight. Like just boot them out. And beat it is another one where you leave. You just leave. Don't get involved and you leave. But the 4th B, which is definitely something that I would recommend doing with younger kids, and I was in a Montessori classroom, I was a 3 to 6 teacher. So I was in that 3 to 6-year-olds preschool. They're learning social conflict. They're learning how to communicate. So the 4th B is build on it. And how do you, and usually what we did is we had like a little talking stick, or we called it a peace rose. We literally had a a peace rose. And I do recommend families get like a little talking stick or a peace rose so that the children can learn to go back and forth. So the parent kind of is like sitting there, calming both kids, maybe even having a gentle hand on both shoulders and saying, I see you're having a hard time and I want to help you. Johnny, you go first. What happened? You tell me what happened. And Joey, we're going to just listen. So you're teaching them how to communicate. Johnny starts, he says, blah, 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 that happened. And then, okay, now let's hear what Joey has to say. And then Joey talks. So you build on it. You let them, kind of solve their own conflicts. It's going to take time. It takes a lot of role modeling, but these are amazing skills for kids to have. So it's, it's tricky. My kids are not perfect. They are, and I usually preface everything with, I'm not the perfect parent. My kids are not perfect. I'm just learning. I'm just learning things every day. I'm learning something new. But I have to say, it was super sweet. My sixth grader, my middle daughter, went off to nature's classroom this morning. So she's gone for 3 days. And my 8-year-old son was just crying because he's going to miss her so much. And then my 14-year-old gave her the biggest hug before she left today. And it was like, oh, they love each other. So sometimes then, of course, a couple days earlier, they were fighting, but they love each other. So it's kind of all about that.
I love that. Amazing. Well, Kristen, I want to get things wrapped up by asking you something that we ask all guests on the show, which is, what does thrive mean to you? And how do you strive to thrive in your everyday life?
By learning. I'm realizing it's all about learning, and I'm learning new things every day, and I'll continue to learn. Thrive is about, learning something new, and definitely giving yourself a lot of grace through the process.
For sure. For sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on Thrive. I think this has been super helpful for all of the fellow parents or will be parents among us. Tell everybody where they can find you online to connect with you more, to learn about your coaching and classes and all that good stuff.
Yes. So my website is KristenAncker.com. So KristenAncker.com. And I have a great webinar on there that you can watch about becoming an empowered parent, and a nice little mindset shifts to make. And I'm on Instagram at Kristen Ancker Coaching. And I have a free Facebook group too, the Parent Empowerment Group. So I'd be happy to have any of your listeners in our free Facebook group. And I do a lot of quick little trainings, and it's just a nice supportive community where we're all just, trying our best. And what I had learned, it's we're doing the best with the tools we have, and we can learn some new tools along the way and try them out. So change can be tricky at times, but it's also really awesome. I think if you're not growing, you're not learning, it's all about learning new things.
I love it. Wait, before you go, make sure you're subscribed to never miss an episode of Thrive. Drop 5 stars on your way out if you like what you just listened to, and come join the party on Instagram at thrive.podcast to stay inspired and thriving all week long. Thanks for tuning in. It's your time to thrive.